the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical Psychology for Today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, voiced by David Ault. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. In this edition of the podcast, we will hear selections from The Sufis by Idries Shah. This audio has been made available by the Idries Shah Foundation. The Coalmen. How can the essence which itself has not found the giver of being? How can it become a giver of being? Jami. Neither Sufism in translation of its literary forms, nor the writings of many Eastern poets can be well understood without a knowledge of the secret language, the hidden tongue, which is used to communicate ideas and concepts. Literal translation of Sufi words or encoded terms has caused an almost unbelievable confusion in the West, especially in the transmission of secret lore. The problem started in its literary form in the 12th century, when the allegorical alchemies were translated. It continues in almost unbroken succession to the present day, when Sufi books are still appearing with a literal interpretation given to what are, in fact, poetic complications, so written as to be clear only to the Sufi. It is impossible to give a full account of all the systems used in secret language form by the Sufis, but we can point out some cases, examples which make the idea clear and also shed light on puzzles still lingering in the West. First, we must go into the matter a little further. The illustrious poet Nizami, in his Treasury of Mysteries, is one of the many who have referred to the cryptography of the Sufis. It is a form of communication among the enlightened ones. It has the advantage of connecting mundane thinking with the greater dimensions, the other world, from which ordinary humanity is cut off. The language will vary in its formulation according to the time and culture in which it is used, but its essence and working remain the same. In classical Sufi times, this language is based upon Arabic, though examples of pre-Islamic use of the system are to be found. Nizami, in one poem, gives this clue about the language. A time will come when our die is stamped on a new coin. The Sufi speech does not belong to any known tongue. Under the poet's tongue lies the key to the treasury. The prophet and the poet are the kernel, others the shell. The secret language, because it is not only a cipher to prevent the profane from understanding things with which they cannot correctly attune themselves, and because it is thought to connect with a greater reality, is immensely complicated in effect. It is the subject of Sufi study in the circles of the teachers, and once its method of procedure is understood, at least one layer of its working is revealed. If we look at the extract from Nizami, we see how double meaning is used to throw the ordinary literary reader off the scent. Our die is stamped on a new coin may be taken to mean a life to come, or even the possibility of reincarnation. But this automatic association is not intended thus. Following, in the original Persian, the basic knowledge that the passage is a clue, we find that the key to the treasury is the title of the book itself, the Treasury of Mysteries. In a secondary sense, it may be taken to mean a treasury of knowledge, but our poet is being more specific. The secret language, although it has expression in the familiar world, is considered to be in a special relationship with the extra-familiar one. Hence it is, in its literary expression, both an art form and also a lead-in to the reaches where there is no known tongue. If we return to an earlier stage in encipherment, The basic system is the abjad scheme, a fairly simple substitution cipher, often coupled with allegorization of the recipherment. This is widely used in literature. Many people read it, or at least look at it, almost as a matter of course, especially poets and writers. Hebrew and Arabic both use similar numerical equivalents for the Semitic letters, also now applied to many other languages. These are the letters and their equivalents. Alif, 1, Ba, 2, Jim, 3, Dal, 4, Ha, 5, Waw, 6, Z, 7, double H, 8, double T, 9, Ya, 10, Kaf, 20, Lam, 30, Mim, 40, Nun, 50, Sin, 60, Ain, 70, Fa, 80, SD, 90, Kaf, 100, A, 200, Sh, 300, T, 400, Th, 500, Ch, 600, DZ, 700, DH, 800, TZ, 900, and GH, 1000. While the Arabic letters have equivalents up to 1000, the Hebrew alphabet has equivalents only up to 400 inclusive. For mnemonic purposes, this arrangement of letters is always memorized as follows, as a string of meaningless words, adding diacritical points to make pronunciation possible. Abjad Hawaz, Huti Kalman Safas, Khushat Fachts, Datzag. In Persian, Urdu, and other non-Semitic languages, the letters are given slightly different sounds in some cases, but this does not affect the use of the letters, whose numerical values remain constant. Dates, names, dates of birth or death, words expressing the character or aspirations of a person, all are often evolved from the scheme. Ignorant repetition of the meaningless words has in some places endowed the barbarous abjad words with spurious baraka, the belief in special inherent functions, but this belongs to the realm of repetitious magical procedures and is not important. Here is an example of how one might use the scheme. Supposing that we want to name a book, showing that it has a certain sort of disguised content, perhaps records of secret processes. We could name it Source of Records, in Arabic, el-Kisa. We examine the words which we have chosen with their meanings. Is mother, matrix, source, principle, prototype. El is of. Kissa, record, story, or tale. El-Kissa, we now see, may mean something equivalent to mother of records, source of story, prototype of tales. We now, if all these alternatives are agreeable to us, encipher the letters by substituting their numerical equivalents from the standard abjad list. Now we add them together. The sum is 267. Now we have to find a sufficiently descriptive or poetic title for our book, made up of letters which, when added, give us the same number 267. Our rearrangement can give us the phrase Alf Layla wa Layla. This means 1001 nights. The title of a book or the author's name will often give a most important indication of the emphasis which is to be placed upon the book and what can be discovered from it. In the case of the Arabian Nights, the person who named the work intended to convey that herein would be found certain essential stories. a study of the stories themselves and their decoding according to the rules of the secret language, gives us the intention or concealed meaning and use of the stories. Many of them are encoded Sufi teaching stories, descriptions of psychological processes, or enciphered lore of one kind or another. However complicated all this may appear, in fact the investigation is inevitable and not difficult for anyone who is working with this kind of material. Most people who do so have been coached in the methodology by their own teachers. It can be said to be a part of Sufi literary training, the point at which literature is shown to be the vehicle for much more complex experiences than those on the literary level as usually understood. We can now look at the mysterious word Sufi, itself the subject of puzzlement and questioning. Decoded by the scheme, we find it to be made up as follows: S90, W6, F80, Y10. These are the consonants used in the spelling of the word. They total 186. In order to decode, we have to arrange the numbers in hundreds, tens, and units. 100, 80, 6. These are now retransformed into their equivalent letters. 100 is Q, 80 is F, 6 is U. These can be rearranged in any of several ways to form three-letter roots in Arabic, all indicative of some aspect of Sufism. The main interpretation is FUQ, which means above, transcending. Sufism is, as a consequence, spoken of as the transcendent philosophy. The names of Sufi authors and teachers have been chosen with the greatest care. They represent a quality, formulation, or emphasis which it is intended should be read into their works, or at least the work in which they appear. Sufis therefore do not approach their teachers' names externally, as the product of their environment, Bokhara, Arabia, and so on, nor as indications of professions, the chemist, painter, spinner. Their names have first to be decoded. Attar, for instance, means the chemist, or the seller of perfumes. On the poetical level, such a name is sufficiently descriptive. Decoded, to gain the essence of the name, we have the number 280. Restoring the numbers to their order of greatness, hundreds, then tens, we have 280. Reconverting into letters, 200 is R, 80 is F. The word which represents the essence, dat, is RF. The dictionary shows us that in Arabic this word stands for the concept of the fluttering of a bird. Attar's masterpiece, The Parliament of the Birds, is a reference to this. More than this, he has chosen the RF root to convey its alternative meanings: to flash with light, to twinkle, shining colour, to be shaken by the wind. The flash refers to intuition, the shining to the projection of teaching, and the use of colours by the Sufis. The shaking used in this root as of a plant in the wind means the movement of the exercises of the dervish. Attar further chooses the plant allegory because Sufism is of a growing, adaptive, organic, and necessary nature, according to its followers. The wind which is taken as shaking the plant is the divine wind, the impalpable force which is known by its effect on the plant as much as by anything else. Shams of Tabriz, the inspirer of some of Rumi's poetry and at one time his associate, is a mysterious figure to the externalist. He is referred to in literature under the sobriquet of Zardoz, Persian for worker in golden thread, people having in consequence inferred that this was his mundane occupation. His whole name was Shamsuddin-i Tabriz. When it is decoded, we find that this was a poetic name, carefully chosen by the Abjad method. His real name, converted and reconverted into letters, spells khit, thread or string, and is connected with gossamer, and also the particles which seem to dance in the sun's rays. Since his name Shams also means sun when literally translated, the play upon words becomes obvious. His other names, such as Parinda, the flyer, can be similarly decoded to produce meaningful descriptions. In initiatory words, the Abjad provides even more profound meanings, familiar to every practicing Sufi. No person may be a teacher of Sufism unless he has himself been through the succession of experiences which are essential. When he has been through these, he is changed, so that he remains an ordinary human being only in the obvious sense. His functions have changed, and he is now a herdsman. What is it that gives him that character? It is a cognition which is called certitude, which the Sufi illuminate, the arrived man or whole one, now possesses. In this he differs from the ordinary man, who is a prey to the fluctuations of his own lack of stabilization. This is expressed in the derivations of the word for certitude. Certitude stands for infallible guidance, and the word for it is yakina, formed of the elements YQN. These are transposed into 160, split again into 100 and 60, reconverted into QSS. The dictionary shows that this word stands for taking the marrow out of a bone. It can also mean herdsman or to become a priest. Sufis therefore consider that the essence of certitude and its expression is the retrieving of the very marrow, the shepherding of others, the exercising of the commanding authority and endowment usually invested in what is called a priest in mechanical religion. It may be noted that the Sufi cannot benefit another person beyond the extent to which his function is acknowledged by that person. As a shepherd, he can look after the external needs of a flock. As a priest, he has the inner qualities to cater for their essential progress. This, to the Sufi, is the meaning of priest, that he should have arrived at some sort of certitude which places him into contact with a greater dimension, not that he should be mechanically created by order or study. A priest is the result of a development. No such priests exist in familiar religion. We can carry the Abjad method, where used by organization, much further than isolated cases. In Sufi circles, instead of numerical substitution, rhyme or homonym is used to confuse the non-initiate as to the symbol of ritual. Several mysterious societies in the West are offshoots of Sufi circles, and can easily be traced back through a knowledge of Sufi organization, historical possibility, or the secret language. The Builders is one. Another is the Coalmen. In Arabic, and thence to Persian, the word fem, from the Semitic root fhm, means to understand, perceive. From it are derived the words to make a person understand, and so on. A Sufi circle called the Famia, perceivers, traces its philosophical pedigree to Bayezid of Bistam. There are two letters H in Arabic. A word using the second H is also pronounced like fem, but means coalman or charcoal dealer. Its members, to commemorate this in ritual, actually put charcoal on their faces. Freemasons are in some Arabic dictionaries called charcoal burners or coalmen. An Italian secret society, originally devoted to doing good and to the ends of mutual protection, was called the Carbonari, the charcoal burners. There can be no reasonable doubt on historical, geographical, and linguistic evidence that this is a deteriorated form of the perceivers. According to Sufi law, when the dynamic element of a living teacher deserts a circle, it becomes repetitious and loses its interior quality. Whatever may be the truth of this, the Carbonari are an excellent example to study. The myth of the foundation of the Carbonari claims that King Francis I of France, died 1547, when out hunting strayed into Scotland, which bordered his territories. He was found and befriended by charcoal burners. These, however, were not an ordinary people, but a band of mystics who had been instructed by an ancient sage. Francis joined them and became their protector. If we realize that the country which bordered France was Spain, and not Scotland, and Sufiized Spain at that, we begin to see another line of connection with the Sufi charcoal men. Scotland seems to be not a mistake, as has been thought, but a code name for Spain. This is borne out by the fact that the Freemasons also state that early lodges were founded in Scotland, and they speak of Scottish rites. The last great expulsion of Muslims from Spain was in 1609, when 1 million unrepentant Moors were deported. In Francis I's time, nothing is more likely than fugitive associations of Sufis in the forests, instructed by ancients. From being a mystical society, the Carbonari became ethical, then political. They were joined by many Freemasons. It is said that under Louis XVIII and Charles X, over 12,000 Freemasons in Paris were also Carbonari initiates. There are many more points of resemblance between the Sufi circle and the Italian. Engravings of Carbonari meetings show the members ranged in the same way as in Sufi meetings. The smallest unit of the Carbonari was called the Baratcha, the hut. But among the Sufi coalmen, baraka is a word for a meeting, originally a signal to call meetings. No less interesting is the fact that it was the reputation of the Sufi coalmen that they could give a baraka or blessing to brides in country districts. In England, even today, brides often call in the chimney sweep with sooty face to give them a kiss just after the wedding ceremony. El Aswad, the black man, is one of the important and mysterious figures in both North European and Spanish Arab accounts of witchcraft rites, non-Catholic ceremonies, in many parts of Europe. Secret meanings in rituals and ideas diffused from Spain may thus be considered to remain in suspension or fossilized in many contemporary systems, where the original meaning has been lost. It is interesting to note that even in Spain today, some of these meanings may be clearer to simple peasants than they are to the non-Arabist erudite of North Europe. Professor E.G. Brown, the celebrated Orientalist, reports a debased Arabic script as still in use for love letters by Spanish peasants in the early part of the 20th century. E.G. Brown, Literary History of Persia, 1956, Volume 1, page 9. Millions of words could be written on concealed Sufic meanings. Sometimes they are contained in phrases, some of them not very meaningful in their apparent sense, but repeated with a fervour which has baffled the uninitiated. Here is one such slogan: "Seek knowledge even as far as China." The phrase, which is on all Sufi lips, has more than a literal or even a figurative sense. This meaning is unlocked by analyzing the use of the word China, interpreted through the secret language. China is the code word for mind concentration, one of the Sufi practices, an essential prerequisite to Sufic development. The phrase is important partly because it provides an example of the coincidence in interpretation possible in either the Arabic or Persian languages. Neither has any real connection with the other. The fact that the word for China in both, though spelled and pronounced differently, decodes to substantially the same concept, invests this phrase with a special significance for the Sufi. This is the method of decoding. China. In Arabic, SYN, letters Sad, Ya, Nun. Equivalent numbers 90, 10, 50. Totaled, these letters yield the number 150. Splitting by hundreds, tens, and units, 100 plus 50, no units remain. Retranslated into numbers, 100 is Q, plus 50 is N. Q and N recombined to form a word. QN. The word QN in the form Khan represents, in Arabic, the concept of scrutinizing, observing, and is therefore taken as a symbol of concentration, focus. The injunction now reads, "Seek knowledge even as far as concentration of the mind." China, in Persian CHYN, letters Che, Ya, Nun, equivalent numbers 3, 10, 50. Before translating into numbers, the Persian letter Che, CH, is first exchanged for its nearest equivalent in the Abjad scheme, which is J. The three sums totaled, 3 plus 10 plus 50 is 63. Separated into tens and units, 60 plus 3. These numbers retranslated into letters, 60 equals Sin, 3 equals Jim. The word we now have to determine is a combination of S and J. SJ, pronounced Saj, means to plaster or coat as with clay. Reverse the order of the letters, a permissible change, one of very few allowed by the rules. We have the word JS. The word is pronounced Jus. This means to inquire after a thing, to scrutinize hidden things, to ascertain news. This is the root of the word for espionage, and hence the Sufi is called the spy of the heart. To the Sufi, the scrutinization for the purpose of ascertaining hidden things is an equivalent, poetically speaking, with the motive for concentrating the mind. In their official documents, and in referring to one another, the Carbonari always use the term good cousins. This is an interesting example of translation from Arabic, and also of the transposing of Semitic roots through alliteration into another language, in this case, Italian. Good cousin in Arabic is the same word which is used of the ancient Sufis mentioned in the Quran, the Muqarribin, the near ones, close kindred. The Semitic radical QRB, from which the word is derived, is cleverly perpetuated in the first syllable of the Italian word carbonari, the KRB sound. There are many other resemblances of this kind in this and other usages of initiatory societies, most of which must remain concealed from outsiders, since they are still in use. This podcast is copyright 2016, the Idries Shah Foundation.